coming up on Wrestling Life.
I told everybody I was going to be a professional wrestler, and everybody laughed at me. I just remember like my senior baseball awards or something. They say, "Oh, senior James Young, his plan after high school is to become a professional wrestler." And everybody, laughing at me. I'm like, what? Whatever. So and then it became reality, and the whole town like, oh my God, we have a local guy actually got signed by WCW. It's kind of crazy.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Joining me on Wrestling Life today, he is a former WWE and WCW star, the author of new book Young's Time, and wrestling's one and only Korean redneck. My guest is, of course, the one and only Mr. James Young, aka Jimmy Wang Yang. James, how are you, my friend?
Howdy, man. It's your boy, Jimmy Wang Yang. Just messing with you. James Young, kind of busy weekend, but today I'm James Young. My book dropped. So kind of pretty busy with that, dropped on Amazon. It's on Spotify, Apple, the paperbacks on jazzyang.com. And how the hell are you, Ben? How's it hanging over there?
It's all the better for speaking with you. I was so pleased when you said you do this show because, there's so many aspects of your career that I absolutely loved being a fan back in the day, and I'm looking forward to diving into some of those. But before we get to that, I want to talk about this new book. So Young's Time, you said obviously it's available now. And of course, there's a lot that goes into writing autobiography, and you've had this very wild wrestling journey from being a fan to being there in the later days of WCW and then during WWE as well. But I'm sure, writing this book has been a really personal experience for you. You've got to kind of really go back, haven't you, into some quite heavy places when you write an autobiography. I heard you said in an interview recently that you talked a lot about the challenges you faced in your childhood and how you grew up on food stamps and ramen noodles. What was it like for you to revisit some of those earliest times in your life?
Yeah, so writing this book, I just, I thought it'd be a good project to do, so that's how I started putting pen to paper probably about 15 years ago. Wow. And then I finished it and I realized I have a lot of trauma, so it's like, oh my God, I didn't, I still have a lot of anger about my childhood, so it was kind of like therapy for me, but realizing, to me, I never, I don't look in the past, I just kind of move forward. But revisiting the past, I was like, golly, I had a pretty rough journey, and I think I still have some issues I have to work out. So, yeah.
Well, we all do. I mean, going through childhood and adolescence and everything, it's not easy for anyone. But I mean, it does sound like you had, a pretty tough upbringing in many regards.
Yeah, and even that, when you're a kid, you don't realize, you just think it's normal as a kid. This is life. But then when I become an adult, then I look back on my situations, and my dad left when I was like 9, and he left I have three sisters and one brother. He left all of us for his new wife, so I didn't, and I don't remember the last time I talked to him. I was like, it's kind of, whatever, and then, my mom is in she's a diehard Jehovah's Witness. She's hardcore. She's every Saturday knocking on people's doors and telling them that they're living their life wrong. And growing up with that in that religion, we didn't have birthdays or they didn't celebrate holidays. So it's like, I didn't understand it, but being a kid, and when your birthday comes around, everybody's wishing you happy birthday. And then when they ask to say, hey, so what are your parents going to get you for your birthday? And then it's like the awkwardness and yeah, my parents don't celebrate birthdays, I'm like, and then the question is, why, it's like, I don't know, that they don't appreciate the day that you was brought into this world. It just didn't make sense to me. So like, but getting, that was childhood and you thought that was normal because you kind of believe everything your parents tell you when you're a kid, but then getting older, I'm like, wow, they're really horrible people, So it's like, kind of, yeah, kind of crazy,
Quite hard to kind of go through that again. Obviously, you said it's taken you quite a few years to work through this book because you've got to go back to some quite hard places, haven't you, in that process?
Yeah, for sure. Like that's the thing. I grew up on ramen and food stamps. Like, what's your favorite ramen, Ben? You like ramen over there?
Yeah, I'll have a nice like chicken ramen or something if I can. Yeah.
Yeah, like a 10-cent package,
we had a lot of super noodles. That was what we had over here. They're probably very similar. So like kind of a dry noodle that you put in the microwave for like 30 seconds. And yeah, I used to love those.
Yeah, 2 minutes for the ramen here. Yeah.
But I mean, what a crazy journey from obviously where you started to where you are now. And I think, for us wrestling fans, you brought so many different kind of personas to life. But it all begins with you. You're growing up in Atlanta, I believe I'm right in saying, and your first exposure to wrestling is TBS. So you are a WCW kid through and through, not a WWF kid. And am I right in saying that it was Mr. Steve Borden, the one and only Sting, that hooked you?
Yeah, for sure. So that's the thing. Like growing up in Atlanta, and then I grew up in poverty, so we only had one TV in the household, and we didn't have cable, but we had the public broadcasting, and my TV could only pick up two channels. We had the antennas with the aluminum foil on there, so like the best two channels was PBS and TBS, and like I do like Sesame Street and Mister Rogers, but I love Atlanta Braves baseball and WCW wrestling, So like the first time I seen Sting, like he hooked me. I was like, that's my Superman and really my role model because my dad left. Like I wanted to be just like Sting. So like he hooked me. And then like even my mom took me to my first WCW live event at the Cobb County Civic Center in Georgia. And I was just 11 years old, and when we walked into arena, I see the ring and the lights. I'm like, oh wow, this is awesome, wrestling live, And then the wrestlers are coming down, and they're like real life superheroes. I'm like running to the barricade. I'm like, oh my god, these guys are awesome. I'm sticking out my hand, like, please touch me. And then Sting's music hit. Sting, and they're reaching out like, oh, please slap my head, touch me. And he gave me that high five. I was like, oh, I'm never washing this hand again, So like, but like he's the one that hooked me on professional wrestling. So like,
so this is old school surfer Sting we're talking about, blonde hair and face paint, yeah. I mean, I remember going to my first wrestling show when I was 12. I went to a WWF show in the UK, and I remember the same. I remember, first time kind of putting my hand out for Bret Hitman Hart. He was my guy. He was the equivalent of Sting, and I remember the same, getting the hand pat and being like, "Wow, this is incredible." But I also remember how loud it was. Like it blew me away. Like actually how loud the ring is. Like the things you don't see on television, like actually how loud it is when someone is slammed in a wrestling ring. It's the only kind of thing you can experience live, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And then I to tell you about Bret Hart, like, 'cause I didn't watch WWF at the time, and then I started getting into it, and I was like, I knew Bret Hart for stealing the Scorpion Deathlock. I was like, oh, he's just ripping off Sting's finishing move, And
I remember the first time I saw Sting, and I was like, he's ripping off the sharpshooter. That's Bret's move. Yeah. So you fell in the 90s. You were a WWF guy or a WCW guy, weren't you? And we also got WCW. Like we didn't have as much exposure to WCW over here in the UK. It was far easier to watch for WWF. So you didn't see, we all had like the Galoob figures and stuff. We all had WCW figures, and we had the ring because the WCW ring was better because it came with like the cool cage and a little button that they jumped into. But that was it for WCW for us. Like we were in the UK, we were very much WWF through and through. Even throughout the Monday Night Wars, really, it was still, it was WWF way more than WCW over here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Just because the WWF had such a hold on Sky TV and actually who had exposure to it. So it was quite hard to watch WCW in the UK in the 90s. Yeah. So you're a little stinger. You're obviously hooked on WCW. When do you start to make that transition from being a fan to becoming a wrestler?
So like it was my sophomore year in high school. Everybody started to think about what you're going to do after high school. Like people going to college or army or anything like that, stuff like that. And I was like, I wasn't the best student. Like I really only graduated because I was really good at sports. So like, but then that year is like, okay, what are you going to do after high school? And as a baseball player, I played baseball, football, basketball, and wrestling. But I was really good at baseball, so I got an offer for college baseball. And then I was obsessed with wrestling at the time. I was like, man, like, what would be the coolest job to have for a grown-up? A baseball player would be really cool, but being a professional wrestler, that would be the ultimate job. That's the coolest job in the world. So like, I started doing my research about how to get in professional wrestling. Actually, I went to the grocery store. Used to I didn't buy the magazines, but I'd go there and sit at the magazine counter and read all the wrestling magazines. And then one magazine in the back had "How do you get into professional wrestling" by Percy Pringle, aka Paul Bearer.
Yeah.
So I ripped that out and stole it, basically, or whatever, borrowed it, and but what happened? How I got into professional wrestling is my best friend in high school. His name's Ryan Forrester. Was on I was on the basketball team with me, and he got kicked off because of grades. So he started spending more time at church, and then he met a local wrestling promoter, and then he was talking to him and said, "Oh yeah, me and my friend, we love wrestling. We do it in the backyard every day. We dress up anytime we can as wrestlers and all this kind of stuff." He said, "Oh, okay. Well, why don't you guys come down, or why don't you come down and come train with us?" And then he came back and told me he went to wrestling practice. Like, oh no, really? So, I got to go too. So the next week I followed him, and then we started wrestling at a bar in Atlanta called Wrestling, so like at 17,
Wrestling in a bar.
Yeah.
What, like no holds barred kind of style, just proper battles in the middle of a bar?
But it was it was like a sports bar, but on the patio they had a wrestling ring. So it's like it was
that's awesome.
It's a wild place, but we wasn't even allowed to be in there technically. So like it's like because it's 21 and up in Atlanta, but they let us in to train for professional wrestling.
So did you, because I always used to see the Nitro parties. They used to show them every week on WCW, kind of all the college kids getting together. Did you do Nitro parties?
Oh yeah, that's I'm glad you remember that, because that's exactly what
I remember they used to every week cut to it, didn't they, and show different people's Nitro parties on TV.
And they say if you did good enough, you would be featured on, or they would show you on the Nitro. So like we would totally dress up as wrestlers and do the backyard stuff and hoping to get on the commercial, So.
Did that ever happen?
No. I think it's because because we were doing crazy stuff in the backyard on the trampoline. So like it's probably was good not to show us falling off the trampoline and stuff. Do not do this at home.
Yeah, exactly. But am I right in saying that you had, so DDP was living quite near to you, wasn't he? Was he in your neighborhood in Atlanta?
So he was in so that's the thing. Like I was crazy about wrestling, but so the next town over is where DDP lived and Eric Bischoff. And those kids in that town went to my high school. So, that side and this side, we'd go to the same school. And in school, everybody knew I was the crazy wrestling fan. And some of the kids said, "Hey, we got a wrestler that lives in our neighborhood. I'm like, what? Really? Who? But they didn't know wrestling. They said, oh, he's tall and he blonde hair and he has like a curly mullet and he goes like, bang. I was like, Diamond Dallas Page lives in your neighborhood. Oh my God. Really? That's crazy. So I was like, and then Halloween was coming up. So like me and my friends, like, we know which neighborhood he lives in. So we're going to make the ultimate plan. We're going to all dress up as wrestlers and go to every single house till we find his house. And that's what we did. And then like, I remember finding his house and we knock on the door and then Kimberly Page opens the door and I'm like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. Like, you're the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life, like, and she's like, oh, you guys are so cute. I got to go get Paige for this, I'm like, he's here. No way, like, and he comes down and he comes to the door and he goes, bang. And we just all pop and like, oh my God, this is great. And he was so cool. I said, oh, come inside. Let's take pictures. And we went inside, took pictures, and it was so awesome. And then we're leaving his house, and then Eric Bischoff drives by, and he yells out, DDP sucks, NWO rules, and was like, oh my God, there's Eric Bischoff, running, trying to meet him. But I forgot my book bag at Paige's house. So I said, oh, I'll be right there. I got to go get my book bag. So I opened the door and said, hey, Paige, I forgot my book bag. He said, okay, go get it. I grabbed the book bag, and when I was leaving, I turned to him. I was like, hey, DDP, I know how to wrestle. I wrestle in the backyard and for the high school. He said, oh, kid, yeah. When you get old enough, come back. I'll take you to the power plant. I was like, that sentence changed my life because like I thought it was going to be possible to get a tryout at WCW wrestling because DDP said, when I get old enough, I can come back and he's going to take me down there. And that's when I really got into professional wrestling. I read every book, researched every wrestler, worked out like crazy, and everything did everything I could to get that opportunity with DDP. So. Oh,
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, he's DDP has kind of paved the way, I think, for so many people and opened so many doors. That's awesome to hear how he did that for you.
Yeah. I know, and I know he was just bullshitting with a 16-year-old kid, he's, like, I know he doesn't remember telling me that, but that one sentence, like, really changed my life, and put me on this path of wrestling,
Have you told him that since?
Yeah, I told him, because, even after the day we met him, we, stalked him. Like I drove by his house every single day after school. Like it was like a routine kind of thing. It's like just go to school, drive by, just to see if I could get a glimpse of him, and then and then drive by, and then like Christmas was coming up, and we saw him outside putting up his Christmas lights, and we was like, "Hey, DDP, you need any help?" He's like, "Oh yeah, come down here, monkeys." He used to call us monkeys, and then we had to put up all his Christmas lights and like on his roof and his big ass house, and. I just remember Kimberly coming home and was like, what the hell you got those kids up there for? Like getting on, I was like, oh, they're just putting lights on. Well, yeah, that's dangerous, And I remember he bought us a pie, he bought us he bought us a Papa John's pizza, and it was like the coolest thing ever. It's like DDP bought us Papa John's pizza, so it was yeah. But yeah, he's done a lot for me and so many people. Like, he's such a great guy, So.
Yeah. So when does I know you trained at the power plant. When did that begin for you?
So that's, so after stalking DDP, then I get started, and then Ryan started wrestling, and then I followed Ryan to the bar. So then a few months go by, a few months. And then all of a sudden we got a call from the promoter, and he's like, "Hey, we need you guys down here this Sunday." I said, "Oh, yeah, why?" Chris Canyon's coming down here, and you guys are going to do a tryout for WCW. I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
Really? I said, I was like, "Yes, we're there." So we go down there, we get to the bar, and then all of a sudden AJ Styles walks up, and Jason Cross, like and then we meet them. Say, hey, how you guys doing? Like I say, oh yeah, we're going to do a tag team match. It's going to be AJ and Jimmy versus Jason and Ryan, and you guys going to have this tryout match in front of Canyon. So, really? That's like the first time I met AJ Styles. But then here comes Canyon, but he doesn't come alone. He brings like a WCW entourage. I'm such a fan. I'm like, oh my God, there's Ron Reese, Disco Inferno, Billy Kidman, Raven. I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like, it's like these guys, I love these guys, So we have the crazy match, and then I just remember afterwards talking to Canyon. They asked and say, hey, so now we're going to go to a bar across the street. It's called American Pie. I said, you guys want to come? I'm like, hell yeah, awesome. I get to hang out with WCW wrestlers. But I'm 17, so I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in. But I said, oh, don't worry about it. Come with us, and they're wrestlers and get the VIP treatment. So I go over there, hang out with them. And that's even another crazy story, because when I was talking to Chris Canyon, I was like, hey, Chris, I know DDP. Me and Ryan, we know DDP. It's like, what? Really? I said, yeah, we got, I didn't say we stalked him, but I was like, yeah, we helped him put up his Christmas lights and blah, blah, blah. He's like, really? Let me call him. And he called Paige there. It's like, hey, Paige, do you know Jimmy and Ryan? So, oh, yeah, I love those guys. Those are my, my little slaves. I was like,
so you're in.
Title Run Toys Series 1. Dangerous Danny Davis. Wrath. Juventud Guerrera. Ernest the Cat Miller. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Coming to the ring soon.
Yeah, kind of. Because then a few weeks later go by, and then Chris invites us to breakfast, so me and Ryan are still in high school, so we skip school to go eat breakfast with him. And he's talking about the business and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, okay, cool. Then we go back to high school life. And then like a few weeks after that, he comes to my work. I was a cook at a restaurant, and he comes in, and he also brings another entourage. Glacier's there. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome, and I cooked them the best meal possible, so, and then after they got done eating and stuff, and then he sat me down and said, hey, Jimmy, WCW is going to hire you, Ryan, and Jason, and AJ. I was like, this is crazy, like I'm not, really, I'm not even 18 yet, because like I was, whatever. They said they were going to sign us. I turned 18 in May of 1999. I got my first contract in June of 1999.
Wow.
And then I had my contract at high school graduation, and it was just so crazy. And then high school ended, and then they needed me they wanted me to go down to a power plant. So like, and then I got into power plant, and then I tell everybody that the power plant turned me into a man, so pretty rough.
Well, before we get to a power plant, what did your friends at high school think to the fact that you got signed to be a pro wrestler for WCW?
Yeah, everybody, the whole camp, like it was, everybody was just didn't believe it, because even before, I told everybody I was going to be a professional wrestler, and it just everybody laughed at me. I just remember like my senior baseball awards or something. They say, oh, senior James Young, his plan after high school is to become a professional wrestler, and everybody, laughing at me. I'm like, what? Like whatever, so, and then it became reality, and the whole town like, oh my God, we have a local guy actually got signed by WCW. That's kind of crazy, so.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, the power plant. So, obviously, I've heard a lot of stories about a power plant over the years. Obviously, Sarge was an incredible trainer, but obviously didn't suffer fools lightly. It was a tough place. What was your experience like going through the power plant?
Yeah, so even that first day, right, me and Ryan pull up into the parking lot, and So we're ready to go in, and at the door, it's Shane Helms and Shannon Moore. That's the first time I met those guys.
Right.
Like, oh, hey, how you guys are Chris Canyon's cruiserweights too? It's like, yeah. When they all hired us at the same time. And then like, okay, let's go in, and we knock on the door and say, hey, we're here to meet Paul Orndorff. We're wrestlers. And they look at us like we're crazy, like, you guys are wrestlers. You guys are, 180 pounds, like, we're getting, no, wait right here. We have to get this cleared. And it felt like we stood outside forever. It's like, what is going on? So then they finally let us in. And the first person we see is Sarge, and we say, hey, Sarge, I'm Jimmy, Ryan, Shannon, Shane. So I don't give a fuck who you guys are. Like, what are you doing here? Say, oh, we have a meeting with Paul Orndorff. He's like, oh, no, you don't. What are you doing? I got to figure this out. You guys go stand in the corner. I was like, oh, no. So, okay, we got to go stand in the corner, so. And it's like my first introduction to Shannon and Shane, and it was sort of like nervous and scared, everything. So I start cracking jokes with Shannon and Shane, and we start laughing like, He turns and I'm like, what the f*** are you guys laughing at? You guys want a fucking tryout? Let's have a fucking tryout. And they try to kill us that day. Basically they just beat our ass for like 8 hours, and it was rough, so like it was really rough. And then the next, that day is done. So then the next day we show up, and Paul shows up that day to work, and then we talked to him and said, hey, so what'd you guys do yesterday? And we explained what happened. And he came outside and said, hey, guys, these guys already had contracts yesterday. You guys didn't have to do that to them, so. And so. But then it was the first day was the hardest, but the second day was hard, but not as hard as the first day.
Well, I guess it's proving yourself, isn't it? You've kind of got to do whatever you're put through in the power plant. You have to just do it, I guess, to get that respect.
And it's like testing your heart, really. That's how much do you want it, because like at the time, everybody wanted to be professional wrestlers. And it's like so many people would show up and say, hey, I want to be a wrestler. It's like, oh, you want to be a wrestler? Like,
yeah.
If you can do it, so. Well, I was at the power plant for like 4 months. And then after I got fired,
Right, okay.
In 4 months because I didn't know why. Like, I didn't understand wrestling politics at the time. I just thought, get a job, you do your job, and, people see you and you get rewarded for it, but it was just part of politics because we was part of Eric Bischoff's project. And then he took a leave of absence, and Russo came in, and then everything that was a part of Eric Bischoff's ideas, they just scrapped them, and then they fired me and all this kind of stuff. And then and I took that really hard because I was like, I got my dream job, and then I was here for 4 months. I did everything they told me to do. And then I got fired for it. So I and then again, my whole town knew I signed with WCW. So everywhere I went, everybody would ask me about wrestling. I was like, oh my God, I gotta go hide somewhere. Like I gotta get away because I can't handle all these people asking me what happened. And so my dad lived on the other side of the county, or other side of the city. So I reached out to him and asked, hey, I just got fired, all this, like everywhere I go, people are asking me about wrestling. I need to kind of get my shit together before I can go back out out. And I said, hey, can I come stay over here? And he told me no. It's like, no, you cannot stay over here. So I kind of was like, motherfucker, I was like, so I got to go face everybody. And you're my dad, and you closed your door on me. I'm like, oh, golly. So then I got back into independence, started wrestling. But some reason, I grew a big set of testicles during that time. And I was like, I want this job. So I went back to WCW unannounced. I go inside. I go up to Paul Orndorff's office and say, "Hey, Paul, can I talk to you for a little bit?" He said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And it's like, "But yeah, come in and talk." And I was like, I had all my information. I said, "Paul, I'm ready for this. Like, if you ever need me, I'm ready. I'm telling you, I'm ready. I want to prove it to you. I want to prove it to everybody that I'm ready." And then I go home, and then a week later, Paul calls me and it's like, "Hey, Jimmy, we need you for Saturday night." I was like, "Saturday night? Wow, that's awesome. This is my favorite show. This is great." It's like, "Oh, yes. Just tell me where and when. I'll be there." And say, "Oh, it's in Amherst, Massachusetts." I'm like, click. Where the f is Amherst, Massachusetts at? Like, I have no idea. I'm like, "Oh no." I'm 18, and I only traveled once in my life. I only been on an airplane one time before wrestling. So like, and I was with my parents, so they did all the parent stuff, So I get the airplane ticket. I'm 18. I get to the airport. I'm like, "How do I check in?" I don't know how to check in. And then I check in, and I was like, "Okay, now go to the gate." I'm like, "Where is Amherst, Massachusetts at?" I know where I'm flying into Boston, so I pull out the map, and I'm like, "Oh, Amherst is like 2 hours west of Boston." Like, how am I going to get there? Like, I don't know how I'm going to get there because I'm 18. I can't rent a car. And I'm like, "Oh, how? I don't know how this works." And thank God for Shark Boy. So I saw Shark Boy at the airport. He saw me lost and said, "Hey, Jimmy, how you getting there?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Oh, just come with me. I'll take care of you." So I rode with him, and even when we get to the hotel, I'm like, I can't get my own hotel. I can't check in. I don't have a credit card.
Wow. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So he took care of me that first Saturday night taping. And then even when we get to the building, like, remember, I'm like such a fan still. I walk in and I see all these wrestlers. I'm like, "Oh my God, there's Viano 4 and 5, like, oh, there's Juventud Guerrero, there's Prince Ikea, like the Armstrong brothers, like the guys I watched on Saturday night. I was like, "Oh man, this is so awesome." I was like, it's cool. But and again, I didn't really know how TV production worked for wrestling. So I don't know what's going on. And I said, "Oh yeah, go look at the board, see who you're wrestling." And then I look at the board and I don't even see my name, right? I'm looking down, but I see my first and middle name. My middle name's Carson, so I see James Carson. I'm like, that's got to be me, like it can't be two James Carsons here, I asked him, "Oh yeah, that's you." So, "Can I go by my wrestling name instead of my first and middle name?" So yeah. "What's your wrestling name?" I say, "Yun Yang." So okay, Yun Yang. Yun Yang versus the Demon, Del Torborg. And I was like, "Yes, I know Del. He's my friend. We train together." Like, it's in wrestling, it's so much easier to wrestle somebody that and it's a stranger. And so that we put a match together, and I'm so nervous, and so just so nervous. I remember, I'm not a religious person, but I remember praying like, "Oh, please help me get through this match." But that's something I don't do, And then once I walk through the curtain and all my nerves go away, we had a great match. And then afterwards come back and they say, "Oh, that was really, really good. You guys are going to be the main event for this Saturday night taping. When it airs on TV, you guys are going to be the main event." I'm like, I'm main eventing my first WCW Saturday night? That is crazy,
That's incredible.
That's crazy, and then after they told me that, I said, "Oh yeah, well, we're going to bring you back to the next set of tapings." And then that next set of tapings, they came up with the Young Dragons, Jimmy Hart, saying, "Hey baby, I got 3 count over here. They need somebody to wrestle. So we got Kaz Hayashi, we got you, and that other wrestler's really, really good, but he's from West Virginia. We're just gonna put a mask on him and call him Jamie Son, and we're gonna create Young Dragons, and you guys are gonna wrestle 3 count." So
yeah, I mean, I loved the Young Dragons. I loved that period of time in your career. What was that period like of kind of being paired for three of you in the Young Dragons?
that was awesome. I just remember I'm an 18-year-old kid. I did Saturday night, and then now I'm becoming a character on WCW. I'm like, this, it's so real for me. And then getting to wrestle Shannon, Shane, and Evan, and the chemistry, we all had the same mindset. Let's go out there and just steal the show every time.
Yeah.
That was our mindset. I was like, those guys were awesome. And even with Jamie and Kaz, all five of those guys pushed me so hard to do as best I can, but I was so green in the business. Like, if I didn't have those guys, if I didn't have Jamie and Kaz on my side and those guys pushing me, there's no way I would have lasted in WCW, so.
But as you say, it was a real bright spot in kind of 2000s WCW where, behind the scenes, everything was kind of coming off the rails and leadership was changing left, right, and centre. The work that was going on between the Young Dragons and 3 Count was like a real high spot of WCW TV during that time. Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't even understand the business part of it at that time. I just knew I had 5 different bosses during that time, So I was like, I'm just happy to be here. You put me on Monday Nitro and the Thunders and the pay-per-views, and then you guys are going to wrestle on Starrcade. I'm like, I don't know how I could complain about anything, I'm like, I don't, whoever didn't show up to work that day or whatever kind of business decisions that y'all are doing, I'm like, I'm here and I just love to wrestle. So it's like,
Could you? Because I know when the WWF buyout of WCW happened. It certainly caught all of us fans unawares. It was insane how quickly that happened. I still remember, watching that final Nitro in Panama City and just thinking this is like the Twilight Zone. This is just so surreal. Could you see it coming beforehand that WCW, because there was lots of talk of WCW being sold, and there was Eric Bischoff was trying to put together a team to take over WCW. In those kind of last months, were you seeing things changing and thinking, I'm not sure I've got a future here, or were you just kind of going with the flow?
Yeah, I was definitely going with the flow, but as a WCW guy growing up, and even now, it's just I would never thought WCW would go out of business. Even with the bad business and the decisions and all that kind of stuff, it's WCW is it's like a staple in the world. It's not going nowhere. And all these rumors about who is buying it, Bischoff, and all the talks about it getting bought by someone, but even that last Nitro, again, it was in Panama City. So I'm from Georgia, so all my friends found out that we're doing Nitro in Panama City during spring break. And they was like, oh man, this is awesome. Jimmy, please come down early. We're going to do spring break. You're a WCW wrestler. We're going to have a good time. It's going to a spring break time. So we get down there early. And that whole week, I'm just having fun as a 19-year-old WCW wrestler on spring break. So I'm just having a lot of fun. Just say that. We'll just a lot of fun. And I just remember going to Nitro. And I was like, okay, now it's Nitro, time to go to work. And I walking up and we see all this WWE signage, it's talent relations that way, talents that way, catering's that way. And we didn't have that in regular WCW. I'm like, oh, wow, this is different. And then we have the talent meeting and get everybody in the room. And we're sitting there and all of a sudden Shane McMahon walks in. I'm like, whoa. And then Briscoe and Pritchard walk in behind him, and then I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. I'm like, oh, are they really here? I was like, and then they told us what happened. We bought WCW. Tonight we're going to put the last Nitro on, but we're going to try to rebrand it and do our own WCW. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, and then they say, oh, the Young Dragons, you guys have a match with the Rey Mysterio and Hoovy, and then with Shannon and Evan in a 3-way tag team match. I'm like, okay, now thinking about wrestling. And then we have the match, and we kill it, and then come back. And I'm like, man, but when I'm still such a fan at heart, I don't want to sit in the back and watch the monitors, on the wrestling on the monitor. I like to sneak out in the balcony and see it live because I like the live energy. So like watching it from from the balcony, and the angle, I'm like, is the greatest angle I've ever seen in my life. You got WWE versus WCW, you got Vince versus Shane. And during the day, they told me that they're going to pick my contract up. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, this angle is so cool, and I'm going to be a part of it. Wow, this is going to be amazing. And then after I watch the rest of the show, I go back in the back, and then like reality hit me. And I walk in the back, and everybody back there is like crying and hugging each other. I didn't realize 95% of the people just lost their jobs.
Yeah.
So I was like super excited about the angle and got my contract. And then I was really sad about what happened to 90% of the company, so.
I'm Mark Merrill, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
Yeah, that's tough. And I think, obviously the WCW invasion and that period in 2001 has kind of gone down in history as like what could have been, as like the kind of greatest missed opportunity in wrestling. I mean, I still think it's the saddest thing in the world that WCW went out of business. I don't think wrestling's ever fully recovered from that. I think having WCW was such a distinct and iconic brand, and so was WWF, and wrestling was undoubtedly at its best when those two companies were at their best as well. And I know it's such a shame that there wasn't that they couldn't find a way to actually continue the WCW brand because it offered something very different. You go to that kind of you have that final Nitro, which is pretty surreal. When do you first encounter Vince McMahon? You've met Shane McMahon. When do you first meet Vince?
Not until years later, because since the WCW invasion angle kind of failed, or it did fall, it did fail. So like, we sat at home for a few weeks, and then they opened up developmental in Cincinnati, Ohio, Heartland Wrestling Association. So I had to move up to Cincinnati, and at that time, they only had the one show with one roster. They had Raw and SmackDown, but it wasn't separated at the time. Yep. And they picked up the WCW guys. They also picked up the ECW guys. So they had a whole bunch of wrestlers, and in 6 months they fired me. Because I didn't get brought up to the main roster. So and then after that, I went to All Japan Pro Wrestling. So I started wrestling in Japan. and then 2.5 years, and then I came back to WWE as Akio, and that's the first time I actually met Vince McMahon. So like, and seeing him coming down the hallway, like this guy looks like he has like an aura around him. Like his a aura. I'm like, oh my god, that's Vince McMahon. Like he's coming this way. Like, oh my god, like he's probably the most important person in professional wrestling. Like it's like, oh my god, this is Vince McMahon. Then once he comes to me and starts talking to me and gives me a handshake, like all my nerves go away, and he made me so calm. That was kind of crazy, kind of how that was. That was how my relationship was with him was. So.
Because, I mean, when you come in as Akio, that's kind of at a time when it feels like WWE are starting to begin to get enthusiastic about cruiserweights again. So obviously WCW was the home of the cruiserweights. WWE had never really had a great track record for championing cruiserweights or light heavyweights, but I think probably Rey Mysterio coming over was the game changer. And so that time there, you've obviously got you got Ray, you got Chavo, who you've worked with in WCW. You've got Tajiri, who you're going to get paired up with. So there's some real veterans, Ultimo Dragons there for a period. Like and obviously Jamie Noble's doing some great stuff as well. So it was a really exciting time for the cruiserweight division, especially on SmackDown.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and that's the thing. Ray kind of opened the door for all of us to go there. But like even with TNA, the X Division, all that stuff started to catch fire. Like, and they just see the demand for the cruiserweights. Like in the and kind of the style of matches that we had, and it was awesome. Like all those cruiserweights were amazing wrestlers, and but SmackDown was definitely felt like the wrestling show and featured more of the cruiserweights. So
was Akio a Vince McMahon creation? Do you know who was behind that creative?
Yeah, really, Vince controlled everything. So it's like I know they say all these other creative people and all this kind of stuff, but Vince gets the final say. So like I don't know. I don't really know how that character came about. Like I know they had Tajiri, and then they signed Brian Sakota, and then I was wanting to come back at that time. So like I said, oh yeah, we can do this gimmick with these guys. Like and then it kind of. Because it was so fast with me because I was still wrestling in Japan, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're going to sign you, and then you're going to debut next week at the pay-per-view." I'm like, "Well, that's kind of quick, So okay, let's do it, And but then Tajiri was scared to do the gimmick because we were portraying the Japanese mafia, and the Yakuza used to have a lot of ties in the professional wrestling in Japan, so like he was worried about that.
Right.
And then Ryan Sakota had an injury, so that faction kind of fell apart really quick. So.
And so then, because I've heard you say that you share a record with Marty Jannetty for the most times being fired. So were you released? But before the Jimmy Wang Yang character comes in, were you released again in that period?
Yeah, because Akio had like a 2.5-year run, and had the king of velocity, baby.
I loved velocity.
Me too. That was my show. So yes, and then I got fired again. So this was like the third time I got fired, or no, second time I got fired, and then was working in Ring of Honor. I was actually having a really fun time in Ring of Honor because I started doing this angle. I brought in the actor Bruce Leroy, timeout from the 80s cult movie, and it was like that's my favorite movie of all time, Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. So like we were doing this tag team, and it was awesome. And then got the call to come back, or came back as Jimmy Wang Yang. So,
so when you get the call do you get the call thinking you're coming back as Akio, or is it we've got this new, slightly unexpected character for you?
Yeah, so there's I'll go into this whole story. So I know a lot of people have heard it, but I'll tell it to your audience. So like I wasn't expecting to go back at all. So but I started talking to this really hot blonde. She was super hot. She was on the Diva search, everything. but WWE was coming to Lexington, Kentucky, so that was an hour and a half from Cincinnati. And I wanted to impress this girl. I'm like, oh, like I need to impress this girl. Hey, you want to go to the pay-per-view? Like the WWE pay-per-view, like get some good seats and all this kind of stuff, wine and diner. So I'm like, I say, and she's like, yeah, that sounds fun. So okay, let me hook this up. So we go down there, and I go in the back to go get the tickets, and like me and Vince cross paths, and we see each other, and Vince looks at me. He's like, Jimmy, where the hell you been? And I was like, you fired me? I was like, what? I did? Are you serious? I was like, yeah. So we gotta talk about this. Just stay here. I got to go do this rehearsal. I'll be back. I want to talk to you. So, okay. And I was like, did he not know he fired me? That's crazy. So I started thinking about this guy runs $1 billion company. Like every day he has so many decisions to make. Of course, some things are going to slip through the table, so like slip through the cracks, So I go to catering, I get a steak and potatoes, start eating my steak, and all of a sudden all these people run into me and say, Jimmy, hey, what are you doing? Eating a steak. I say, hey, can you come to ringside? I was like, yeah, okay, I'll come to ringside. So I go to ringside, and I don't know what pay-per-view was, but it was Vince versus God, right? And then something was going on with the Spirit Squad and Shawn Michaels. And so they wanted the Spirit Squad to throw Shawn Michaels up in their finishing move and go through tables. Me and Shawn are about the same size. So they say, Jimmy, you mind doing this bump to make Shawn feel comfortable taking the bump? I was like, yeah, okay. Like whatever. So I get in the ring, and Michael P.S. Hayes looks at Vince like, hey, Vince, you think Jimmy should do this? He's not under contract. And he should be under contract. Let him do it. And they toss my ass up and 20 feet in the air, go through the tables, like say, hey, Jimmy, what'd you think of how did that feel? I was like, yeah, I didn't die, so it's okay. So it's like, I told Shawn, I was like, yeah, it's not too bad. You'll be fine, and then I get out of the ring, and then I was like, okay, yeah, stay here. I'm going to talk to you after we're done. I was like, okay. So I go back to catering. I finish my steak, and I get the tickets, and I talk to the girl. Say, yeah, I got the, fifth row right under the cameras. We're going to have a good time. And then they come to me, say, hey, Jimmy, what are you doing tomorrow? Like I said, what I had planned? This is what I had planned for tonight. So I'm going to have a long night tonight, and but I say, hey, can you come to Raw tomorrow? It's like, it's in Columbus, Ohio. So I say, okay, I'll come to Raw tomorrow. I'll put my plans on like hold a little bit, so I go to Raw, walk in, and it's like, hey, we got you in a match on Sunday Night Heat versus Charlie Haas. I'm like, cool. That's cool. I was like, okay. And then the girl's with me, and so I go put her in the stands, and me and Charlie go out there. We have an awesome match. So I was like, man, this is awesome. So the first night I got the girl tickets, and second night she got to see me perform. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in, dude.
Well, yeah.
And then I get done, and they say, hey, Jimmy, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was, what I got planned? This is what I have planned. But like, hey, can you come to Cincinnati for SmackDown? It's like, that's my hometown. So yes, I'll come to Cincinnati, so. And then when I walk in the building, they grab me and say, hey, we're going to hire you back. I say, really? That's crazy. This is my third time with WWE. I'm like, man, it's kind of unheard of, but I wanted to go thank Vince, like I said, because he's hired me 3 times. So I go to his office, knock on the door. Hey, Vince. Oh, Jimmy, come in. I didn't even know you was fired. I was like, really? But whatever, the past is the past. And, last time I didn't let you talk because you're this Korean dude that grew up in Georgia. But this time we're going to make a negative out of positive. I'm going to make you the Asian redneck. That's funny. And your name's going to be Wang Yang, Jimmy Wang Yang, because it rhymes. I'm like, standing there like, wow, this is really weird. Yeah, Vince, I'll do whatever you want as long as that paycheck comes every Monday. So yeah, I'll be there. So like, but thanks for hiring me again. So, oh yeah, no problem. Get out of my office. So I get out of the office like, wow, that was really, really odd, you know,
Yeah.
just me and him. And I was like, realized that me trying to get laid turned me into an Asian redneck.
But it's a crazy character. I mean, it's the thing is about wrestling. You never really know what's going to catch on, and it did catch on. I don't know, like how long did you realize like this gimmick is like really getting over?
No, that's the test is like the airport test, and like it's like the out in public test, like I just remember like after the first week, like I walked into Kroger or the grocery store and I get mobbed at the grocery store. I'm like, oh my God, this is, I haven't, I've had it happen in Japan, but like I just in my or where in Cincinnati, I'm like, and then go to the grocery store and then I'll go get some, gas in the car and people are starting to follow me. It's like, what is going on? And then go to the airport and, would have to go to the airport like an hour early just to get through the autographs and the pictures and stuff to get to the flight. Like, oh my God, people really love this character. I was like, this is, it was pretty wild. I didn't.
Well, it's that theme music. I tell you, that entrance music, that was everything.
No, that's the thing. I know people love that music, but I actually hated it for wrestling music. Like, because it was so slow, I couldn't get fired up to do what I'm about to do. I'm like, man, I need something faster. Like, I do like country music, I like folk music, but it's a time and place for it. It's like when you're relaxing on the porch, sipping some whiskey or something, like that's the time to listen to that music. It's not the time right before you're about to fight somebody.
But I mean, you had a great run, and I mean, just kind of looking back at your career, like all the people you shared a ring with, like like the matches you had with Rey Mysterio, like what you did with Chave. And I know when you're in Japan, you got to, be in the ring with the Great Muta. Like what kind of stands out to you as like the biggest, I guess, pinch me moment, given that you were a fan, and you were such a big fan? Like, was there a moment when you were like, holy crap, I can't believe like I'm here in the ring right now having this moment?
Yeah, it was since that very first WCW Saturday night, like that's, like from like, cause that was my show, that is what I grew up on. And then, I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts, main eventing WCW Saturday night. I'm like, how is this possible? Like, I was like, how am I here? I feel like I'm just that poor kid from Austell, Georgia. Like, and I'm here at WCW Saturday night. Then I'm at WCW Nitro. Then I'm at Thunder. Then I'm on a pay-per-view. And then I'm on Starrcade. And then I'm on SmackDown. And then all of a sudden I have a action figure. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy.
That's cool.
Then people are bringing me baseball cards. I'm like, I always, I was an autograph hound back in the day. I'm like signing autographs. And then, okay, now like, oh, I'm on a plane. I got to go fly to Tokyo for one day and then fly back the next or the day after the match. I'm like, what is everything's so real, like really, this is, and then, in the ring and I'm looking across and it's, the Great Muta. I'm like, this is my second favorite wrestler of all time. Sting was number one and the Great Muta was second. And I'm standing in the ring with him in Tokyo at a sold out Corrigan Hall. I'm like, this is my life's crazy, dude. Like I never thought I would become what I became, but like it was awesome. And it's like seeing those moments just every time I've been pinching myself. Like I just, this, I don't know. It's just crazy.
A wild ride.
A wild ride.
Have you ever got to tell Sting how much of an influence he was on you?
You got that question. So like going back, it's in the book too. So like, I was a super fan that became a wrestler. So like I told you I used to stalk DDP after high school, like every day, but I was trying to stalk everybody, so Sting had a movie premiere in Atlanta and they announced it on Nitro. I was like, oh, he's gonna be here next week. I'm going because I get to meet my hero, you know. And I was like, oh, this is awesome, you know, it was at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. So go see his movie. The movie wasn't good, but it was Sting, right? So the lights come up, and I remember I'm like 16 years old. The lights come up, and all of a sudden I see Sting just a few rows ahead of me, and Lex Luger and Buff Bagwell. And I'm getting super excited. I'm like, oh my God, there they are! So I go running down there, you know, and I tapping Lex Luger on the shoulder, say, hey, Lex. And so he turns around and looks at me and says, hey, kid, I don't touch you like that, so don't touch me like that. I was like, no! He like stabbed me in the heart. Like, it hurt so bad. I was like, oh my God, like, you were my hero and you broke my heart. And I was like, I took the picture, and then, you know, Sting was next to him, so I got to take the picture with Sting, but I was so torn up about Lex Luger. I didn't enjoy the time I met my hero. Yeah. So that was 16 years old, 17 years old, something like that. So the next year or 2 years later, I'm in the same locker room as these guys. And the thing is, I never wanted Sting to hurt me like Lex Luger hurt me. So I didn't want to give him a chance to do that. So like, and every time I was around the guy, you know, like I would just, don't talk to me. I don't want to, don't ruin it for me. Don't, you know, like I'll shake your hand, but like, do not talk to me because I have this image of you and I don't want you to ruin it for me. So like, I never would let Sting get too close to me because I didn't want him to break my heart, you know? So like, but I know it sounds kind of crazy or weird, you know, but
no,
like,
it doesn't, because there's that whole analogy of never meet your heroes, isn't there? And I know Lex. I mean, I've spoken to Lex a good number of times now, and I know that he's, you know, very regretful about how he was in the late 90s, and probably that encounter you had with him is pretty typical to a lot of encounters that fans had with him at the time. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. The one thing you don't want to do is be crushed by your heroes. And I think with wrestling, you do, you know, you idolize, you know, calling wrestlers superstars, like they are put up on a pedestal. And they are, you know, once you've entered the realm of kind of action game, you know, action figures, video games, all that kind of stuff, you are a larger than life character, aren't you? And with that comes this kind of disconnection that there's a real human being, like probably a really tired human being that's in the middle of doing lots of things and probably just lost, like much like you saying about being at the airport, like just trying to make their way through their day, just trying to do what they're doing. And yeah, challenging, I think. I'm sure a lot of fans have had similar moments over the years, and I get that completely. Have you met him in later, you know, since you've obviously matured and become older? Have you had a moment with Sting?
And I haven't matured yet. I'm still I'm still a kid at heart, you know, like
yeah.
And well, that is a regret I do have, that not making a real relationship with Sting, for I could just call him and say, hey Stinger, what's up? It's the Yanger, you know.
Well, there's still time. We're putting it out there into the universe one day.
Yeah. So, but like, I don't know. I don't, even nowadays, you know, like, I have no problem showing my feelings for people, but like, I don't know if I could break it down with Sting and say, man, you know, you meant so much to me. Like, my whole life is, you know, like, I know when people, they don't talk to me like that, but similar to that and how much I meant to them, it makes me feel weird and awkward, you know. Telling this guy's like, bro, like, basically you was my dad. My dad left and I just did everything you told me to do on TV. So I was like, so
that would be a heavy conversation, wouldn't it?
I don't know how, like, I got to tell him how much he meant to, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want him, after I express my love to him, it's like, oh yeah, well, that's cool, kid. You know, like, no, you know, like,
thanks.
Yeah, thanks. You know, like, I said no, you know, so.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I just wanted, before we wrap up, I want to kind of talk about kind of full circle life. So obviously you've got your own wrestling school. You're helping to train the next generation. And there is a second generation in your family now of wrestling, and that's your daughter Jasmine. Tell me about Jasmine and her entry into wrestling and what the last few years have been like for her, because I know she's doing really well.
Yeah, she's the meanest, the prettiest, the baddest mofo, no doubt, around town. She is the Shu Yang of wrestling, Jazzy Yang. There's the shirt.
Yeah, t-shirt. I love it.
So yeah, she's doing really well. And she's killing it, and she's 22 now. And I tell everybody that she's so much better than me at that age. Like she's smarter than me. She's prettier, thinks better, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, but she's doing really well. She's been to Japan twice. She's wrestled all over the states: New York, Texas, California, Puerto Rico. But she really wants to go to Spain and Europe. Like that's her next goal. So like, I got to bring her over there.
Yeah. So. And did you watch a lot of wrestling together? Like, I assume she grew up watching your work in WWE, but were you kind of fans of it together as well? No,
she didn't like seeing her dad get beat up by the Big Show and Great Khali. So like, that's the thing. Like she watch it, but she's my kid and she's seeing dad get beat up. So she didn't want to watch it. She wanted to watch High School Musical and Hannah Montana, and I don't blame her. You see your parent getting wrestling the Big Show, like you don't want to see that, right? Yeah. So but what hooked her is when she was 15, Wrestle One called me and asked me to do a Young Dragons reunion with Kaz Hayashi, and I asked them and say, well, yeah, I'll do it as long as I can bring my daughter, and I said, yeah, she can come, she can come too, but I was thinking like, yeah, this is cool. Like I'm super dad, right? Like I get to bring my daughter to Japan and all the Pokemon and the Hello Kitty stuff and go see everything. And that's what I was thinking. And then Kaz like, yeah, maybe she can do spot in the match. I'm like, what? No, this is like, no, I wasn't thinking like that, bro. Like, but she is an athlete. Like she did play basketball, softball, volleyball, cheerleading. I was like, yeah, I think she could do it. I think she could do it. So and then we go over there and say, okay, we're gonna do the match, and then like, okay, so this in this time of the match, like dad's gonna get knocked down. You gotta take my spot and do the hot tag. Like this is your moment, right? So here it comes. I get bipped off and I hit the floor but I'm dad, so I'm like super excited. So I gotta come up and see this. So I'm on the apron like, what's going on? And Shannon Moore's in the match and he grabs her and brings her in the ring and she breaks off and starts bam, beating his ass, and he shoots her off and she hits this big head scissors in Tokyo in front of 5,000 people. Like she hits it so well. Place goes crazy. Like I was like, oh my, this is awesome. Like this is the greatest moment I've ever seen in my life. Cause I'm used to seeing her playing sports, like basketball and stuff and all that stuff. I've always been in the stands, but seeing your baby girl do what you do or even fighting is just a different kind of feeling. And how she did awesome on her debut. And then after the match goes by, in Japan, they have a lot of paparazzi and media. So the hotel was just 2 blocks away. So we walked to the hotel and they're all in the lobby, right? And then they see us coming, so they rush out. I'm like, yeah, this is for my return to Japan, baby. What's up? They all pass me and go straight to her. And she's interviewing, signing autographs. I was like, oh my God, but of course, a 15-year-old girl just main evented this Japanese wrestling match and like she killed it and all this kind of stuff. And then we get back to our hotel and she's like, Dad, that was awesome. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a professional wrestler after high school. I'm like, well, if you have to graduate first and then we'll get into professional wrestling. So like that's when the bug bit her, so like that was crazy.
It's amazing. Well, look, just as we wrap up, I want to encourage everyone in my audience there to pick up a copy of your book. Tell me again where we can pick it up, and also how we can keep in touch with you on social media and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. The ebook's on Amazon. The paperback's on jazzyyang.com. Ships worldwide. The audiobooks on Spotify, Apple, Barnes & Noble, all the other audiobook, Google Play, like all the audiobook sites you can get it on. And then if you want to get in touch with me, you got to go through Jazzy Yang, jazzyyang.com. If you can get through her to get to me, that's how you get in touch with me.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, yeah.
That was good. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today on Wrestling Life, and wishing you all the best with this book as well. Everyone go out there and pick up a copy.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And remember, I'm Jimmy Wang, and I'm your boy. Yeah!
I love that. I can't even do any better than that. That's it for another Wrestling Life. Thank you so much for my guest today. Thank you to all of you for joining me. Thank you, as always, to my brilliant producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Productions, for bringing Wrestling Life to life. We've got so many of these fantastic conversations in our archives, so please do check us out wherever you get your podcasts. And the most important thing of all, please hit that follow button, please like us, please tell a friend, and please talk about us using the hashtag WrestlingLifePod. So that's it for another episode. I've been Ben Veal. This has been Wrestling Life with Ben Veal. I'll see you soon for more real talk from real talent. Bye.